All right, welcome to another episode of the Bluquist Human Potential Podcast. My name is Johannes, I'm the host and CEO of Bluquist, talent intelligence and talent management platform. And I'm very happy to welcome today in our show Dirk, CEO of Ixly, one of our strategic partners from the Netherlands. We started conversations a few months ago, and now we try to join forces together in the market with a very clear proposition. And I thought it would be a good idea to bring Dirk on this show to talk about human potential, talent management, the future of that, and maybe also a little bit of AI. Let's see if that also fits into the picture. But enough for the intro. I really want to hand this over now for an intro to you, Dirk. Maybe you tell us a little bit who you are, what you do, what your topics are, both business and at heart, and then we start into this conversation, okay?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Johannes. My name is Dirk-Jan van Werfhorst, CEO of Ixly, as you stated. We're based in Utrecht, which is in the Netherlands. And Ixly is 25 years active in the field of talent assessment, online talent assessment. And it's my same background. I work at several companies within this field. And what is very interesting is that technology is leading us the way and still leading us the way. And it's just getting way more easy to combine a lot of data, talent assessment data, and other information about people, which is very valuable for organizations and also for those people by themselves. And that's what my personal ambition is the upcoming years to, in our collaboration, to bring this kind of solution towards a lot of clients.
Yeah, hopefully, yes, definitely, and help people along the way to become more prosperous and flourishing humans. Yeah. All right. So maybe we start with a nice question at the beginning that's also probably very interesting for many of our listeners and watchers. I understood that you are processing more than 150,000 assessments per year, and for thousands of people in different languages and organizations. So I know from a fact, because I'm in the industry quite some time now, that's a lot of data and a lot of assessments. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about, if you know and if you can share, what surprises organizations most when they look at the data? What surprises you the most when you look at the data that you maybe also didn't expect before you started and before you done this?
Well, maybe give a little broader answer to your question, Johannes, because in the former days, several years ago, assessments were used by organizations just for solely a selection question, for instance. Is this the right person for the job which is vacant? And the last years, it get way more interesting for organizations to look more to a potential question. What can he or she do right now by using assessments? But it's becoming way more, I would say, strategic, and also prolong the employee journey guided by those assessment outcomes. And I think it's a big step, and which has gained also a lot of new outcomes, especially with you guys from Bluquist, when there's a sort of a tech layer next to our assessment platform, which can bring way more value towards candidates, but also to HR managers or hiring managers on a more abstract level from the data. What are interesting things to see over there? What's our collective strength, for instance, or what are our collective weaknesses? Or if we as an organization want to move to a more commercial direction, are we able to do that with the current workforce? Or should we bring some special learning to the table, for instance?
Yeah, that sounds exactly like what we set out also to do, to bring more insight into that area, to remove the guessworking, but not the human judgment along the way. And from your perspective, what real tangible benefit do you get as an organization from employing more than just self-described traits, because that's what self-described competencies, for example, because that's what we see in a lot of projects and clients and also partners. One of the main ways of today of collecting information on traits, for example, cognitive traits, but also skills, is, well, we just give out some kind of text box In the HRM, people can self-describe and self-postulate what they have. So where's the fundamental advantage that you see right now, but then also adding the layer on top of using those kind of assessments?
Well, it all comes down to insights on a personal level, but scientific valid outcomes are really important. So otherwise, it's a bit risky to use those outcomes, especially when it comes down to analytics on a larger scale, and where organizations base their decisions on that kind of input. So it's very wise to use adaptive, scientific, sound, solid tests and questionnaires to give people and organizations more insights in their real personality, for instance, drive, motivations, or traits, as you stated.
What is like you mentioned a beautiful term, or a nice term? It's adaptive. I think quite some people don't understand what adaptive means in that domain. It was also quite interesting to learn for myself when we started our conversations. So maybe you can describe a little bit the topic of adaptive assessments and what this also means for the organization, but the person doing them in terms of benefits.
Yeah. Well, the last years we invested a lot from our R&D department in building adaptive tests. The word adaptive means that a candidate or a person gets a special set of items delivered online to answer, and our system can really quick see if that's a wrong answer or a good answer. So the total number of items which are presented towards a candidate or a person is way shorter than with a more classic test. For instance, a cognitive ability test could dure some 45 minutes, and nowadays we can do that in 15 minutes with way less items, but on a really scientific and reliable way.
Wow.
So it's very useful also for organizations to have really short but very reliable tests.
So it's basically the technology is adjusting to the level of,
exactly,
for example, expertise of the person in order to give them a better experience, but also valid outcomes. Right?
I think that the word better experience is also very interesting, because no one is doing a cognitive ability test just for fun.
No.
But it's very wise to do so for organizations. But when it takes 15 minutes, well, hey, that's way better than 45 minutes or 60 minutes. Yeah,
exactly. I can see that working really well in some of our environments, because some organizations are using our system for hiring decisions, and it's sometimes you have like if you're looking for new talent, sometimes you don't find the talent in your specific area of expertise because that talent is very scarce. You might need to find ways to get talent from other domain-specific areas retrained into that area. But if you give them the same assessments like you give the professional group, they will probably fail at that. So because they have a hard time because they don't come from the domain. That doesn't mean they are worse than the others. It just means they are not as well trained. And here we are already using, also on our side, like specific pathways to send people to, because we know where they're coming from. But I think I think it's pretty cool if you have like an assessment that understands that along the way and adapts to that dynamically. So
for Ixly, we've got a really broad portfolio on tools. So it's really important to pick the right ones for a certain path or a track within your platform.
And yes, exactly. So if you have if you have worked with so many organizations and people, are there patterns organizations consistently ignore that they shouldn't ignore? Like, is there something that you see across the board where like generally you benefit from not ignoring that?
Well, using scientific tested questionnaires and assessment tooling is very important, as I stated earlier. So that's pretty sound. And so use the right science, I would say, in your selection, but also in your development purposes.
That sounds. And maybe to take this one step further, we made a proposal just a few days ago to an organization that like is using a Jungian-based assessment for like 800 people. They have like a few thousand, and now they come to a position where they say, well, if we just hand out the link and then the assessment is being done for personality development purposes, and then it lands in the drawer. That's not really a good use of that investment, because then you don't. So from your perspective, what's the difference between organizations that use assessment well and those that don't use it well? What can you name a few best practices to make that really valuable?
Yeah, sure. I think the purpose is an important one. Because if you use, for instance, the Jung theory, it's not that wise to use it in a selection situation, for instance.
Yeah.
If you use it for workshops, for instance, or team gatherings, it's 2 thumbs up. It's no problem. And the other one is that the best organizations use assessments not solely for the selection of the right candidate, but they use those assessment outcomes throughout the whole employee life cycle, I would say. So that's another reason why you should, at the beginning, should be very aware of what kind of answers I want to answer getting along those employee life cycle or journey, and be very well specific about. In that case, I want to use the right personality questionnaire, maybe cognitive ability, the right motivation questionnaires, and all those data points combined make a really strong and valuable set of data which can be used along a person's career path within an organization. So it's just not solely one investment for an organization, but it's a very wise starting point to use all those valuable insights along someone's
development. Yeah. Where would you, like, let's say you are an organizational leader, 2,000 people, just so far you have HRM data and HRM, you are thinking about starting. Where would you say is, like, if I'm thinking about starting the talent analytics assessment-based approach to people development, where do you start? What is the best quick win or best quick wins to really get going in that with valuable insights?
I see. Well, my first, I would say keep it simple and start small to gain experience, and just try to solve a business challenge.
For example, hiring, better matching, or finding top talents for succession planning, or just personal, or maybe just team development. So very simple.
It could be, or if you're aware of the fact that a department will become obsolete, for instance, in the upcoming years. So what is the potential from those people within the department for other jobs or other positions within the organization? So could we translate all those talent data from these set of people towards other positions in the organization?
Yeah,
and it's very doable with the right instruments.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's switch maybe our perspective to a little bit of bigger context, restructuring, right? We also work in certain restructuring contexts. How often do you really see this kind of data being used in restructuring? Because you also work with bigger organizations, and sometimes restructuring means a lot of change in the organization, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. The process is tedious. You have to define all of that. You moved 1,000, 2,000, 4,000 people into new positions. Maybe some lose their job. How often do you really see this? And there's a lot of bias involved, right? And normally you want a reliable database for data baseline for making those really tangible decisions for humans. How often do you see in your career? How often have you seen that being used properly, like assessment data, to support these decisions?
Well, a couple of years ago, you didn't see that often, and you see it way more often nowadays. That's a good thing. Another really important element is that when it comes to restructuring, it brings tension to the table. So when that's the starting point, it's all about trust. Yeah. So then people don't trust the process or talent. So what's an organization going to do with the talent outcomes, for instance? Then it becomes pretty tricky, and that's the reason why organizations are not that fond of using it. When there's also know examples of organizations which have a more total talent management approach or use assessments throughout the whole employee journey. So they in the prior years they build a really important talent data set which they can use when there's a case of restructuring. So I think it's a timing question, but it should be very wise to start today with using this kind of talent data.
Yeah,
it's an ongoing process because.
What I mean, I assume it's like assessments does not fix bad leadership, right? So what are the things that come above the assessment process that you like should get into your headspace of solving before you start that process when you are thinking about organizational theory? What's the things you need to fix first or think about first?
I think that's a sense of safety and a sense of this is from an organization or leadership perspective. When you're sending out the message towards every person in the organization that everybody is unique and got its own qualities and talents, which aren't static for a certain role because environments are changing more rapidly than ever, I would say, also due to AI and all challenges, beautiful things that comes with that development. So it's also a responsibility for leaders in a firm, to help or to motivate their employees to be aware of the fact that they have talents for their current role, but that they also be aware of their qualities and their talents towards future roles within the firm.
Yeah.
From a more internal mobility narrative, I would say.
So, like before we start, like you said one thing with like AI and this also like changing environments. Mm-hmm. I wanna also peek into that in the next. But before that, on a personal level, can you name one example of your career where you had seen this kind of approach really change the emotional tune of an organization, like the emotional also adaptation of a person, like for example HR leader, to really think differently about people? Do you remember anything that rings here?
Well, I've done a lot of assessments, face-to-face assessments in the start of my career, and in that one-on-one situation, you really see it because someone is participating in an assessment, and then you translate the test outcomes toward that person, and most of the times they recognize stuff, but also very much there are also some hidden talents for them to discover. And you see the same thing in organizations when you talk to hiring managers, for instance. On a daily basis, they see people interacting in a role or within an organization, but performance is not the same as potential or capability towards the future. And it's very hard for, would I say, non-psychologist or industrial and organizational psychologist to grasp that or to predict that kind of trait towards future behavior. That's a specialty. Yeah. And of course you can also do that with online tests. So it's the same thing on a one-on-one, a lot of hidden strengths uncovered on a more organizational level. You see the same things, but also when it comes down to 2,000 or 3,000 employees which have been conducted to assessments, you put all those talent data in one overview and you use talent analytics towards, for instance, the CFO, and he or she can see, well, that's very remarkable. These are sort of collective strength in our organization or department, and in other organizations or departments, you see that kind of quality, and then they can use those outcomes. So if you don't measure things, you can't manage it. I think that's an important one.
True. And how does this reflect in, like, which you just named the CFO, and how he looks or she looks on the data? How does it reflect in terms of bottom line or ROI? What's like the key messages you would convey to those stakeholders, people? Why should I use that from a business point of view?
Well, a lot of people are stating the war on talent. Well, I got news: the war on talent is over, and talent has won.
Okay.
To put it in a funny way, so a CFO or a CEO or a hiring manager should be very aware of the fact that the real value in an organization is its people, it's its current workforce. So you should be very careful to let them go to another organization, for instance. And when CFOs understand that one, or they see a more evidence-based
Yeah.
data visualization overview, they become sitting on the they really get interested in the outcomes because there's a direct relation towards potential within an organization by all its employees towards the value of it towards the competition, for instance. So talent or being aware of talent within an organization, also on a more abstract level, is becoming a real competitive advantage for organizations.
Absolutely, I fully agree. Now, let's switch just shortly to the topic of LLMs and AI. I'm listening and reading a lot on that right now just to form an opinion, because I think the whole industries are trying to form an opinion about right now if you can replace people with AI or with like intelligent systems. Maybe not call it AI. And gain massive productivity gains. And it's always just like, I always see this productivity. There's so many other levers to look at with this kind of massive shift. And then I see AI right now more like something along the lines of, I just had this example yesterday, I read about it, like when they introduced autopilots for airplanes. Back then, that was 1920 already, 1930. The idea of the industry was, well, now we don't need pilots anymore. So the pilot job will go extinct because, of course, planes can fly alone, land alone, start alone, navigate alone, all of these things. But what instead happened is that the number of pilots over the next 10, 20 years got magnified by times 10. So it pushed the whole industry to levels beyond imagination. And in the beginning, there was a big fear about, well, if planes can fly automatically now, why do we need pilots? But it had the reverse effect. What do you think about this in today's age? Is AI or LLMs in the current trajectory something different than that kind of symbiotic relation between technology and humans, and actually accelerating the growth of jobs and of work and productivity together hand in hand? Or do you think it's really something that will replace like more people than it will promote the growth of jobs? What's your opinion on that?
Well, mostly the first. I'm totally with it. It's a cobot, a human interface or tech working together on a repetitive task, for instance. But when it comes way more complex, for instance, landing an airplane, I think there should be someone in the cockpit, or everybody who paid the ticket is very fond of having someone in the.
Exactly. That was like they did studies on this, and actually why it was whenever they called it whenever shit hits the fan, like when something happens, a bird strike, the machine cannot make the decision, right? You cannot put a machine in front of a judge right now, and you will probably not do this in the next 10 years. Yeah. And also people demanded people to be responsibly ultimately. And I think this is something you can quite similar also apply to the current situation, where you don't want to just give some critical judgment process into the technological hands and then fully blindly judge or be judged, for example, also in hiring decisions or other ones, by the machine's answer, which is a probabilistic answer as well. I mean, human answers are also probabilistic answers based on experience, but the replacing with a machine that is also failure prone seems like an illogical step right now. And I hear you also see it a bit like a similar approach.
Yeah, and I think especially when it comes down to assessments, doing things really structured and on a scientific base is really important. So you can use computers, of course, you can use AI or LLMs, for instance, to translate it into text. But it's very important that we can explain, so explainable AI, is that we can explain why this is the outcome when it comes down to promotion, when it comes down to leadership development or selection, especially. when it comes down to reducing bias within selection, for instance. So you can't solely trust on the machine. Computer says green or red. It's utter. No, it's not that wise to do so.
Sure. Could
But
one
tech is an enabler, I would say. Yeah.
could one say that the more these decision-making systems are being used in everyday context, the more it is also necessary and required to use for human-based decisions assessments, because somewhere the reliable base of judgment needs to come from, right? I mean,
Exactly.
as a normal manager, I am definitely not trained in personality trait management, right? And
No.
I'm pretty sure the LLM is also not trained in that in a way that it can make meaningful judgments. So I assume there needs to be like a middle layer middleware that makes this connection possible of reliable, of best decisions, not perfect ones, but best. So how do you see that?
Yeah, well, I totally agree, Johannes, because we also use machine learning, for instance, when we're measuring cognitive abilities.
Yeah.
So there's a big computable power to use, to make it to enable us to bring with a really short period a really reliable outcome in a test score, for instance. So we're using it. So we using it in our platform, within our tools. So it's an enabler. So tech will be an enabler, and it also with analytics, it's really helpful for organizations, because otherwise it's way too complex to oversee it for a human being. And I think so. We use tech, we use analytics, we use machine learning, we use AI to bring even better test outcomes to the table towards candidates, but also for organizations. And I think that's what motivates us as Ixly, and it's also very interesting from a scientific point of view.
Yes, absolutely. Switching back to the, let's say, the role Chief HR Officer. I mean, you are doing this, as far as I know, since 2005. That's 21 years.
I'm getting old.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm getting wise. So, what is like? How has the conversation changed? Is it the same, like just different, like dress, or is it fundamentally different?
No. When I was starting doing assessments, for instance, from a big bank in the Netherlands, it's all about selection. And just pinpointing, this is the person, he or she should do this, these are the competencies. Is it a match or a mismatch? And we wrote a beautiful written report, which took us 2 hours to do so, just for the candidate and for the bank. And nowadays it's totally different, because organizations are using, for the majority of functions within a firm, online assessment tooling, and they just want an answer for can he or she fit, is he or she fit for this job? But way more interesting is also the question, what's the potential about for this person in the upcoming years? Could he or she become a manager? Could he or she be, how adaptable in learning is he or she, or on a cognitive, flexible way? What are the levels? So it's way more, I would say, holistic way of viewing towards talent and people in organizations than just solely on one role. So people are moving from jobs really quick nowadays, and also,
And which questions aren't leaders and chief HR officers and talent managers asking enough still today? So which are the blind spots you see that could fix a lot of things?
Well, let's put it this way. I think the CHRO, for instance, of the leader who asks themselves questions like, within a certain department, can I predict which are the people who could step in this role? For instance, a role will be vacant within a couple of years. Are we an organization, do we have the insights within our technology set or human capital system, HCM, for instance? Do we know as an organization what are the special capabilities of people or talents? And can we predict which of those people can step pretty easily into a future role. I think those organizations are doing the right thing at the moment. If you can't answer that question, or you're not aware of that question, I think then you have to, well,
Work on that.
rethink. Yeah.
Because people want to develop further. They want to grow. They aspire to be higher versions of themselves, which might be a new job or another career. And if they can't do it in your organization, they might find another way to do it. So that's
Yeah, and I also mentioned the internal mobility element. So it's really also wise, but also useful to keep those people which are doing a great job within your firm for the upcoming years, instead of that they're demotivated or that they're looking at another firm to move. Because from an assessment perspective, assessing someone is costly. But cost is also an element from a CHRO position, CHRO or CFO position. So the cost of a new hire is so you have to go to an external firm, a search firm, for instance, or selection firm, which costs 20K or something.
Easily.
Then you conduct an assessment for 3, 4, 5 candidates. So when you make that financial overview complete, it's pretty wise to invest in people and to give them more insights in their personal talents and capabilities, and educate them or facilitate them towards a future role within the firm. So they stay engaged, they stay motivated, and even more important, they are more effective.
Yeah, exactly.
Or happy.
Hopefully. That's what we try to optimize.
Probably well, because motivation, happiness,
it's very
correlated.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, but this is a beautiful space to talk about then our collaboration, because there the connections are strong. When did you realize Ixly and Bluquist are good partners and belong together? Like, what brought this realization to you?
Well, from my point of view as a CEO, I think the part Bluquist brings to the table was the missing link. It's an intelligence layer for an organization. When it comes down to career paths, for instance, when it comes down to talent pools, it comes down to succession planning, matching future roles within an organization towards the current workforce. That kind of functionality didn't we have in our assessment platform, because the Ixly assessment platform was built to deliver a seamless assessment process.
Yes.
So I think the Bluquist and Ixly combination is a really complementary one, and also a really strong one when it comes down to giving organizations way more insight in their total workforce or in the matching possibilities.
Yes. The thing is, I agree, and there's also reasons behind it. I mean, we started 2020 around that time, and you always, like as a startup founder, you always see yourself faced with the situation of limited resources, right? It's like you try. For me, it's like starting a company, building a company is like you have an engine that is like somehow broken, and you're always fixing parts along the way and try to keep it running until you have fixed so many parts of the engine that it starts to run more smoothly. But along that way, you are constantly fixing stuff, and when here the screw is missing, then you might not have that screw at hand because it's too expensive. So you have to find a way to, and along that line of metaphor, we also had to decide at one point, are we building assessments or are we building an intelligence layer that embeds organizational assessment data and lets organizations configure their own things and integrate into SAP and those things, because building reliable assessments is really hard work and costs a lot of money. So this was the route we didn't take, and I think taking both routes costs a lot of money and time at the same time, which sometimes is not what you have as a startup. So we took the other route, and now also have like tens of thousands of users on the system, but we are lacking we're lacking those like really reliable assessments on a broader range of also requests our customers give to us. And here I think around 40, 50 verified reliable assessments give us together a really good edge of value on both sides, the psychometric side but also the organizational layer, and that's why we come together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in your words, what does it mean for the HR director? If like an organization starts to work with our combined solution, what changes?
Well, to put it shortly, I think HR will become way more strategic and also play a more valuable role when it comes down to, well, it's cost thing as we discussed. So it should be aware. It's way more strategic because the talent data, which is gathered by doing the assessments, but then in a really, I would say, practical way, useful in an organization. I think in the former days, there was a lot of information, but it was in silo A, silo B, silo C, and D. So the CHRO was asking the question, well, guys, help me out. I've got this business question or organization, but it wasn't able to use the data. And I think in our collaboration, we can use the current assessment data or talent data. Yeah. We can also merge that with other informations, or relevant employee information, and make it really workable.
Yeah, and is technology solving like most and all of these problems, or what is the hardest part about turning assessment and also employee data into actual organizational intelligence and workforce planning is something I hear a lot. We need to do better workforce planning with clear targeted role development and like this overview. Like, is technology solving all of this, or what is there a harder part to the problem?
Well, I think technology is the fundament, to be honest, on which those solutions can deliver. I think on a more people perspective, personal perspective, it's all about trust. Trust in the talent data, trust in the process, trust that the organization will do best with my talent data, that I got certain possibilities to improve myself with more personalized learning tracks, for instance. I think when a CHRO is giving that enough attention, it will work out really well.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of tech, trust, and of course scientific
rigor.
Yeah, rigor. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Since we are ending soon, maybe 2 or 3 more questions. If you look at the next 3 to 5 years, where is this going? Where is this shift? And also, not just from our perspective, but market perspective, we are not the only ones thinking about this. Where do you see it, the use of this data in organizations going in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I think the more and more organizations will understand the topics we just which came to the table. So that's a good thing. I think the use of talent data will gain speed. And I don't think there's a shortage of talent, but I think that's really important to have. If you dive deeper into the talent, you will see more as an organization. I think that we'll see that more and more.
Yeah, hopefully, where the focus will shift.
We're trying to delivering our part, Johannes.
Of course, we will do our part to that, and we will do it in a good way and focused on the humans, as always.
It will be more on a continuous enrichment, I would say, of the whole data set to be used in decision making. And I think that becomes evidence based, then it becomes trustworthy, then it's not. Trust. Trust is an important word.
Yeah, it's an evolution and not a revolution. And I think, like, if industry and industry leaders would finally start to replace in their thinking resources with human, and put the R out of the HR and put like the potential inside there, a lot would change, because people like where they work. They like to be recognized where they work. And like the classical view of resource is not the one that is driving organizations to sustain success in a very ambivalent world when it comes to changing jobs, but also changing environments and industries. So if you
Exactly.
get the trust of your people to stay with you and let them innovate and also grow, then you have much better chances as any organization than if you do it the other way around, right?
Exactly. So talent, or investing in talent, and this way of working with an organization is a competitive advantage, to put it mildly.
Yes. Beautiful conversation. Thank you. Is there, like, if you could say, like, any closing statement, is there anything you want to end this conversation with on a closing note?
Well, I would say stay curious.
I think that's a good one. All right, Dirk, thank you so much for your time. We
You're welcome.
normally don't do this over 40 minutes to keep it precise and short for people watching and listening. So thanks for your time. It was beautiful talking to you. And we do what we do anyways after this podcast in our collaboration. But for now, have a nice day and thanks for joining.
Thank you, Johannes, and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.